Thanks for tuning in. You're watching ARIRANG News, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Hwang Sung-hee. Our top story this afternoon, the two men believed responsible for the deadly attack at the offices of a French magazine are still on the loose and are thought to be hiding out in a vast forest north of Paris. Now, in one of the largest police operations ever seen in France, tens of thousands of officers are combing the area, hoping to find the suspects before they can do any more damage. Son Jung-in reports.
Police have been searching door to door in a forested area north of Paris, following reports the two main suspects had been spotted there. There are also reports they robbed a gas station in the area. Police have warned local residents that brothers Cherif and Said Kouachi, 32 and 34 years old respectively, are heavily armed and extremely dangerous. While tens of thousands of police and several helicopters continue their hunt for the men, 9 people with close ties to them have been detained for further investigation. Another suspect, 18-year-old Hamid Murad, gave himself in at a police station early Thursday. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack. However, AP reports citing a senior U.S. official that the two brothers have links to a Yemeni terrorist network, and the older brother had traveled to Yemen in the past. The news agency also reports that the two were on the U.S. government's no-fly list. In a separate incident Thursday, a policewoman was fatally gunned down in a southern suburb of Paris by a suspect described as wearing black and a bulletproof vest. However, authorities say they have found no link between this incident and the assault on the Charlie Hebdo magazine. France held a moment of silence at noon local time on a rare day of national mourning for the 12 victims of the attack, as well as for the free speech they stood for. The Eiffel Tower was also dimmed for a time at 8 p.m. as a vigil continued at the Place de la République. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
A tribute paid with the pen. That's what cartoonists from all over the world are doing following the massacre at the office of Charlie Hebdo on Wednesday. They have come together to demonstrate that freedom of speech will prevail and that such attacks will never keep them from breaking out their pens. Lee Ji-yoon has more.
A picture is worth 8,000 words. French leading broadsheet Le Monde posted an image that says wholeheartedly with Charlie Hebdo and promised to do all it can to keep the tragedy-stricken magazine up and running. Australian cartoonist David Pope's image went viral on social media. His image shows a gunman standing over to a dead cartoonist and justifying his action by saying he drew first. Pope says nothing justifies the brutal and shocking massacre. Many of the cartoons spoke on behalf of the victims and stood up for free speech. The Telegraph's cartoonist Christian Adams was one of them. His published product shows no illustration and is titled Extremist Approved Cartoon. This one is by an American political cartoonist Rob Torno. It shows sharpened pencils and pens being pointed against their attacker. Torno wrote a commentary on the massacre, saying the cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo gave their lives to advance freedom of expression. French London-based illustrator Lucille Clark's image shows the solidarity of her colleagues. This image was liked over 82,000 times on Instagram. Posting the image, Clark writes, "Break 1,000 will rise." Just like that, cartoonists from all over the world mourn the deaths of their fallen colleagues, but promised not to back down in the face of violence. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
There's fresh evidence North Korea is able to, or very close to, having submarines capable of firing ballistic missiles. Given the level of stealth submarines have as they glide underwater, such a breakthrough would pose a significant security threat to South Korea, Japan, and even the United States. Kwon So-ah reports.
Satellite pictures posted on 38 North show North Korea is upgrading a submarine to make it capable of firing missiles. The U.S.-based website devoted to analysis of North Korea says a rectangular opening around 4 meters long and 2 meters wide can be seen on the submarine, which sat in the North Simpo South shipyard at the time the photos were taken. Satellite imagery analyst Joseph Bermudez says the hole probably contains launch tubes that could fire up to 2 missiles. Once the process is complete, the ship may then be tested for land attack missile technology. If the analysis turns out to be correct, then North Korea's submarine development has taken a significant stride forward, posing a bigger threat to South Korea, Japan, and U.S. bases in the region, given that submarines are much harder to detect than other pieces of military hardware. It would also mean a whole new level of missile defense planning for nations at risk. However, experts believe North Korea still lacks technological experience, and constructing missile-capable ships would be expensive and very time-consuming. Although there appears to be no immediate threat, satellite imagery also showed workers moving around the shipyard's facility over the past 6 months. This raises concerns Pyongyang is actively working on a possible naval construction program. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
There are mixed signals out of Seoul and Washington about how advanced or not North Korea's nuclear missile technology is. The U.S. Defense Department says there's no hard evidence that shows Pyongyang has the technological capacity to develop miniaturized nuclear warheads that are small enough to fit in ballistic missiles. Earlier this week, the South Korean Defense Ministry said in its white paper that North Korea is closing in on mastering the technology. This could become a huge security threat since if Pyongyang was able to make miniaturized warheads, they could technically be attached to ballistic missiles, which could potentially hit the U.S. mainland. It's been 4 years since the United States sent aid to North Korea, and it seems that streak will extend into a fifth. A spokesperson for USAID, which is in charge of administering foreign aid to civilians, says there are no plans in the 2015 fiscal budget to provide any type of humanitarian assistance to North Korea. Washington last sent aid to Pyongyang in 2011 following a massive typhoon and monsoon rain there. It came in the form of $1.5 million to 3 private organizations that provided food and medical aid. So where is North Korea headed with its nuclear program, and what should the U.S. do about it? For an expert's view, I spoke with Joel Witt, senior fellow at the U.S.-Korea Institute at SAIS, who currently runs the 38 North website and served as an official at the State Department for 15 years. Have a look. So in his New Year's speech, Kim Jong-un expressed his desire to mend ties with South Korea. He even suggested an inter-Korean summit. But at the same time, he made clear he has no plans to end Pyongyang's nuclear program and demanded an end to joint South Korea-U.S. military exercises. So how do you assess his speech?
Well, I think it would be right to be very cautious in our assessment of what he said. He did offer that olive branch, but there are a lot of conditions that are attached. And the bigger issue here is that there's not going to be any resolution to the nuclear problem without an active American involvement in solving this whole problem. And right now, the U.S. administration really isn't involved at all.
In less than 2 months, South Korea and the U.S. will be conducting their joint military drills. If the Koreas don't make any progress by then, do you expect to see North Korea launch another provocation?
Once again, you're asking me to make a prediction, and so what I would say is that at the moment, there is no sign, at least, of preparations for a long-range missile test or even a nuclear test. Whether they would launch other types of provocations, I really don't know, but I would point out that experts repeatedly predict provocations and are wrong most of the time.
So given North Korea's steady progress in building up its nuclear capabilities, what steps should the United States and its allies take this year to cope with Pyongyang's nuclear threats?
Well, I think it's very clear, at least to me, that American policy is in disarray, and our coordination with South Korea in order to have the maximum effect on the North is not very good. So the first step here is that in Washington, we need to conduct a full-scale review of American policy towards North Korea. The chances of success may be not so great. But nevertheless, the way we're approaching this problem now has clearly failed. I'm talking about a full-scale review that looks at not only the diplomatic track and what might and might not be possible there, but also a more reasonable, measured, and effective approach on sanctions, and also looking at the trends over the next 5 years in North Korea's WMD programs and making sure that we take the security steps necessary to protect ourselves.
Do you foresee a shift in Washington's policy towards Pyongyang in the coming months?
I'm very skeptical. I think the administration has other issues that it's focused on. And also, I think the administration has basically given up on trying to deal with North Korea, aside from occasionally slapping sanctions on Pyongyang. So I'm very skeptical about that. Nevertheless, one way of perhaps encouraging Washington to shift would be for South Korea to take a greater role in pushing the Obama administration to become more active. I know a number of us were hoping for that when President Park was elected, but that hasn't happened so far. And without an active American involvement in dealing with North Korea, I'm very skeptical South Korea can get very far, particularly on the issues that at least we care about, which is the security threat posed by North Korea.
Thank you, Mr. Wi, for your time today. Tumbling oil prices and fears of Greece's possible exit from the Eurozone could spell trouble for global financial markets. An index that measures risk aversion in markets around the world has soared to levels not seen since the 2008 global financial crisis and the U.S. credit rating downgrade in 2011. Kim Min-ji reports.
The world's financial markets are on edge, with risk soaring to levels seen during the global financial crisis of 2008. The Citi Macro Risk Index, which measures risk aversion in global financial markets, rose to 0.96 this week in a scale of 0 to 1. The index, indicating riskier market conditions when approaching 1, tracks various financial data, including stock market volatility and bond rates in the U.S. and other emerging economies. The high rating stems from the dip in crude prices that began in mid-2014 and fears that it could spell financial trouble for emerging markets. Greece's possible exit from the Eurozone is another factor. It is rare that the index soars to above the 0.9 mark. The current level matches previous records seen during the 2008 financial crisis and after the 2011 downgrade of U.S. credit rating. The uncertain future of Greece and a prolonged recession in the Eurozone, coupled with global crude prices falling below the psychologically important $50 mark, suggest markets will remain unstable for some time to come. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
The improvement in consumer sentiment in Korea has prompted Koreans to put a bit more on their credit and debit cards. The Credit Finance Association of Korea says combined spending of $45 billion was made through credit and debit cards in November last year. This is up 5% from a year earlier. Now, during the same period, the number of card payments jumped more than 14% to over 1 billion. In particular, payments at local convenience stores topped $512 million, which is a record high. The amount spent buying Korean cars jumped 42% to nearly $2.5 billion, largely due to falling crude prices. Riding the new wave of popularity in webtoons, Korea's online-based cultural contents market is poised for massive growth over the next 3 years. The KT Economic Research Institute says the market size of the industry will double to $800 million by 2018. The institute took added value into account when making the forecasts, such as character licensing, messenger emoticons, and the export of contents. In order for the industry to grow to $1 billion in size, the report suggests establishing a global distribution channel, either by launching a new platform or through existing smartphone app stores. Internet of Things is no longer an unfamiliar term to us. The theme is actually dominating the world's biggest technology trade exhibition, the Consumer Electronics Show, this year in Las Vegas. Our Kim Ji-yeon shows us how the latest and hottest gadgets are getting smarter, more wearable, and super connected.
What should I wear? It's a question people constantly ask themselves after setting foot in the 2015 International Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Perhaps a drone for your wrist that unfolds and takes flight on your command to capture a Kodak moment. Or something that helps you make the most of your time in the gym, tracking your heartbeat and movements. And who needs a chauffeur when you can order your BMW to pick you up right away?
BMW, pick me up. It's not science fiction anymore. The age of the Internet of Things has already started.
Wearable smart devices are increasingly in the spotlight. Companies present gadgets in line with the Internet of Things, where devices are talking to each other across the Internet. Companies believe that everything we touch or interact with will be connected to the Internet in the next several years. Samsung Electronics set a goal of having all of its devices, including home appliances, connected to the web by 2020.
I'm coming home.
And the climate for business looks bright with the rising demand for smart home devices. U.S.-based Strategy Analytics forecasts the global market for smart homes to grow more than $100 billion by 2019. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
We're almost done with the first full week of 2015, and it's time to wonder what the next 12 months might bring. So what's in store for the nation's presidential office, the parliament, and main political parties this year? For a rundown of the year's biggest political events and what impact they will have on the public, Park Ji-won reports.
The first major political event of the year will be on February 8th. That's when the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, will hold a convention to select a new party leader and Supreme Council members. Up until last July, the opposition party was led by two co-leaders, Kim Han-gil and former presidential candidate An Chol-soo. However, the party faltered in July's by-elections and has been led by interim leader Moon Hee-sang ever since. Former presidential candidate Moon Jae-in and Park Ji-won, a close aide to former President Kim Dae-jung, will go head-to-head for chairmanship of the party in February. On April 29th, by-elections will be held for the three parliamentary seats that turned vacant when the minor opposition Unified Progressive Party was disbanded in December. These are three electoral districts in which traditionally progressive parties have been successful in the past. If the ruling party loses all three this time around, though, it could be seen as a referendum on the incumbent administration. In May, both the ruling and opposition parties will elect their new floor leaders. For the ruling Saenuri Party, an internal strife between supporters of President Park and those who don't stand with her has widened. Whoever replaces current floor leader Lee Wan-gu, who's in the Park Geun-hye camp, will have a big influence on the relationship between the party and the presidential office. Later on in the summer, the minor progressive Justice Party will elect its new leader. Experts say the most watched of the party elections this year will be when the new floor leaders are picked in May.
The presidential office can push through its agenda at Parliament so long as the floor leaders cooperate. For the president, the floor leader is more important than the party leader because the floor leader leads legislative duties. If the ruling party's new floor leader comes from outside President Park's support base, it will be a tough year for the presidential office.
The government aims to forge ahead with reforms aimed at a more flexible labor market at state agencies and at the national pension system. These are issues that are controversial, so they require a cautious approach to minimize backlash. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
South Korea has completely ruled out co-hosting the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics with North Korea. Spokesman for the presidential office of Cheongwade, Min Kyung-wook, says the government will not be co-hosting the event with any other nation, and that includes the North. There had been speculation South Korea might make an offer to the North, as Seoul has been looking to open up high-level dialogue and improve relations with Pyongyang. On Thursday, South Korea's Unification Minister Ryu Gil-jae flatly denied that any co-hosting offer would be made during such talks. Now, this comes after North Korea offered to host some of the Olympic events at its Masikryang ski resort last month. The International Olympic Committee had announced plans that would allow host cities to share events with other countries to save costs. Some 15 years ago, NASA launched a scientific research satellite into space to capture images of the planet we call home. The space agency recently released some of the best photos, and they show the Earth in all its splendor. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
This is one of the most beautiful composite photos of the Earth. The title Blue Marble combines several data and images from the Terra observation satellite in 2002. The photo dramatically depicts a place that millions of living organisms call home. But the Earth does not always look so beautiful. This is a photo from a massive California wildfire in 2013. It is the third largest wildfire on record, measuring 1.5 times the size of Seoul, and was big enough to be spotted from outer space. The California blaze wasn't the only Terra satellite captured. Over the past 15 years, over 40 million wildfires have been recorded, damaging roughly 1/3 of the Earth. Even signs of global warmings are captured. This picture was taken in 2002, showing the Larsen B ice shelf melting away. This gigantic shelf is 5 times the size of Seoul, but in a matter of seconds, it breaks apart. Scientists say it shows the severity of climate change. The photos have been captured and collected by NASA after launching its first flagship observation satellite into orbit in 1999. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Although we had a cool start to the day with sub-zero temperature readings, things are slowly recovering back or even higher than the seasonal average. The frigid cold winds are leaving us and being replaced by a warm front from the west. And as you can see here, we have partly cloudy skies now, but more clouds will move in as the day progresses. Now, our weekend weather is looking bright as well, with mild temperatures and no precipitation expected whatsoever. However, the cold will turn up again on Monday. And now taking a look at the readings for today, Seoul will peak at 2 degrees this afternoon, while the Gwangju and Busan will reach higher at 6 and 8 degrees respectively. And moving over to other regions, Jeju-Hwaning gets up high at 10, Dokdo heads down to 4, while Mankungang reaches below at -6. Well, that's all for Korea. Now here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that does it for this edition of ARIRANG News. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.